is so exciting, really beyond words, for me to be here this week and to finally and officially begin this new chapter of building our community together. I'm looking forward so much to this summer of beginnings and barbecues and concerts that it is very surreal for me to remember that just a few days ago, at the beginning of this past week, I was finishing teaching high school students in our summer school Tanakh class. So anyone who has ever been a teacher, or anyone who has ever been a parent, or anyone who has ever spent time with young people, you know it's an adventure. So it was our second to last day of class. This was only an 11-day class. Things were going smoothly, and I was like, all right, this is going to be great. We just got to slide it in. And so we had a problem, though. Student morale started flagging. Things were not looking good. And so I got some help from an expert mentor and made a plan to come back the next day to take things in a different and improved direction, kind of finish on a good note. But still, even though with that good plan, I went home feeling just defeated and despairing and thinking to myself, we're this close to the end, and now I have to manage another problem. It was as if all the frustrations of the entire school year came back and gathered in this one moment of struggle. But the next day I got up, I came to our classroom, I implemented the new plan. Everything went smoothly. The students participated, they learned, and the class did in fact end on a positive note. After the students had gone home, my expert mentor asked me how things had gone. With gratitude, I said that everything in the classroom went well, that as always her suggestions were helpful and right on point. But then I remarked on how upset I had been at home the previous day, how frustrated and despairing I felt, and telling the story of my own struggle, I laughed out loud. It's funny now, I explained to my mentor, now that it's over. Despair and humor are two things that don't seem to go together. And yet, these two emotions, these two experiences, are connected more often than we might expect. So this week, as I said before, we're reading this combined Torah portion, Chukat-Balak. These two Torah portions aren't regularly read in the same week, and we only combine them in years when Shavuot falls on Friday and Shabbat, as it did this year a few weeks ago. Now, individually, each of these Torah portions has its own notable content. Parashat Chukat begins with the instruction to find an unblemished red cow and create mei nidah, special waters of purification. This instruction is our classic example of a chok, as in Chukat, a commandment in our tradition that seems arbitrary rather than logical. Now, Parashat Balak is a very different note. It contains the well-known story of a talking donkey who tries valiantly to stop his master from cursing the Jewish people, or at least trying to. But in the end of that story, curse turns to blessing. God is on our side, and we get the last laugh. In our cycle of Torah readings, every year, Parashat Balak feels to me like a surprise. It's in the midst of the summer months. We're reading about the journey of the Israelites and their struggle in the wilderness, moving from Mount Sinai towards Israel, our holy land. And all of a sudden, we have this one parsha with a talking donkey. While there are many interpretations, of course, about the message of the donkey and the deeper meanings involved, there is widespread consensus around one thing. The story is funny. To see an animal talk back to its master, to see the master flounder at his appointed task, these things make us laugh. But why does the Torah give us this laughter now, at precisely this point in the year? Is there something about this moment in our annual cycle of Torah readings that makes us need humor this week more than ever? This year, I found an answer to this question as I looked again at the first part of our combined portion this week, Parashat Chukat. While this parsha opens with the instructions to bring a red cow and create purifying waters, it contains other stories as well, of struggle and triumph, despair and tragedy. It tells the stories of the Israelites' military battles with Sichon and Og and our hard-won victories. It tells the story of the death of Miriam and the people's thirst as they struggled without Miriam's ability to find water. It tells the story of the death of Aaron, our first high priest, and of Moses taking Aaron's priestly vestments and placing them on Aaron's son Eleazar. The Jewish people saw Eleazar in these garments and they cried. They knew Aaron had breathed his last. And if that wasn't enough tragedy, it is in Parashat Chukat that we read the story of Moses' great mistake, his straying from God's instruction, and as a consequence, God denying him entrance into the promised land. Every year when I read the story of Moses, it all seems to unravel so quickly. It begins with the people arguing with Moses, which we've seen before, and they're accusing him of bringing them out of Egypt to die of thirst in the wilderness. So as usual in moments like these, Moses and Aaron go to the tent of meeting to seek God's guidance. And God gives them instructions that are fairly straightforward. You take the rod, assemble the community, and in the presence of the community, instruct the rock to bring forth water so the people and their animals can drink. And Moses and Aaron follow these instructions mostly. Moses takes the rod, Moses and Aaron assemble the community, but then Moses departs from the plan. He shouts at the community in anger, and he says that he and Aaron, not God, will get water from the rock. Then the water comes out just as God said it would, and the people and the animals drink their fill. While the people's thirst is quenched, God's punishment to Moses is swift. Neither he nor Aaron will be allowed to lead the community into the Holy Land. As God explains, the problem wasn't specifically with hitting the rock, it was with their failure to affirm God's holiness to the people. And this failure ultimately indicated a lack of trust. So many things are deeply tragic about this story. First, Moses and Aaron are punished so severely for what seems like a minor infraction. Second, Moses and Aaron, after all they have done for God and their people, are denied the reward of finally coming into the promised land. And finally, and for me saddest of all, God does not seem to take pity on them, seeing how hard they have been trying and giving them just one more chance to apologize. This story ends by giving a name to these waters that came from the rock, Me Merivah, the waters of quarreling, and affirming that these waters in this story ultimately come to show us the Kedusha, the unique power of God. From a certain perspective, I can see that this is one moral of the story, to teach us that God is in charge of how the events of reality unfold, sometimes giving us the chance to undo our mistakes, and sometimes creating rifts that can't be mended. Yet this is a deeply tragic message. It can be so easy to despair as we see and acknowledge that we are not solely in charge of how reality unfolds, and sometimes our choices have terrible consequences that we'd never intend. We must remember that we have the power to move forward from tragedy, that even if something bad has happened today, something beautiful might happen tomorrow. In Parashat Chukat, God's punishment is harsh and swift. But in the very next Parashat Balak, God provides great blessing to the Jewish people. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael. How lovely are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, Israel. These words, uttered by our hapless donkey driver, are a blessing so powerful that we repeat them in our tefillot and our prayers every single day of the year. This message of hope, that we can move forward and thrive even after times of frustration and despair, is a message that I learned and relearned as a classroom teacher. I found that one of the greatest gifts I could give to my students and to myself was to approach each session as a new beginning. Perhaps yesterday a student struggled with a lesson, or perhaps yesterday I struggled as a teacher. But today is a new day, a day on which any number of beautiful things might happen. And in order to see today as a new day and to leave yesterday behind, I had to laugh. Sometimes I could laugh at myself, sometimes my students would laugh at me, and sometimes my mentors would share stories of their own past struggles, events that were really, really not funny at the time, but that we could see the humor in now that they had passed. Being able to laugh helped me let go of my past struggles and to be open to the blessing of a new day. So this week we read Parashat Chukat and remember our loss and grief, and then we move right into Parashat Balak, giggling and guffawing at its talking donkey and hapless master. These moments of humor, as unexpected as they might feel, truly are perfectly placed. They open our hearts and minds just in time to receive words of blessing. How good are your tents, O Jacob? How lovely are your dwelling places, Israel? As we begin this new chapter together in community, may we all be open to humor, to laughter, to openness of heart and mind, and the blessing of a new day and a new chapter ahead. Shabbat Shalom.